Cinemascore's Monster Madness.
We had to get some kaiju action for this year's Monster Madness. Since we've already taken care of all the Godzilla films, let's turn to another Toho monster, Rodan. Released in 1956, this was the studio's first monster movie in color. Godzilla was temporarily in hibernation, literally buried in ice for the time being, so now was the time to focus on other monsters. The plot centers around workers in a coal mine who are baffled when some of them go missing. Turns out that deep within the mines, there are creatures that are sort of like giant caterpillars that are killing everybody. Even worse, they leave the mines and spread terror throughout the village. It's a strange start to a movie that's about a giant winged reptile, but for now, it's caterpillars, which are actually a kind of dragonfly larva known as meganolon. We center around a character named Shigeru who has amnesia after surviving a cave-in inside the mine. He's the first one to see Rodan, but he needs to regain his memory before he can tell us about it. It's a very slow build-up to the real monster of the movie. It does a good job at creating suspense. We really get inside his head and all the miners, who convey a sense of claustrophobia and delirium. When Shigeru's memory comes back, we learn through a flashback that Rodan hatched from an egg inside the mine and ate the meganolon. Next, Rodan attacks the major cities, and this is where things get good. The destruction scenes are always the highlights. Here's a surprise. Rodan is joined by a mate. That's right, there's actually two Rodans. For some reason, it's always easy to forget about that. If you're a fan of Japanese monster movies, Rodan is one of the essentials that you have to see, because it's one of the first. The effects may be a little primitive. With all these kaiju films, the effects generally got better as time went on. But because it's so early in the genre, it's a commendable effort, and the idea to have a flying monster was very ambitious. When I first saw this as a kid, the VHS copy from the video store was the English dubbed version. Seems nowadays there's a much larger market for subtitles. Back then, dubbing was the only way you can see them. Since that's the version I grew up watching, I've always appreciated that one. I like the narrator's voice and how he draws you into the story.
One thing that disturbed them was the fact that number 8 mine was going too deep. Far deeper than any vein they had ever worked.
An interesting side note about the dubbed version is that a lot of the voice work was provided by George Takei, best known as Sulu from Star Trek. But there's other changes in the American version. It begins with stock footage showing atomic bomb testing.
But what have these tests done to Mother Earth? Can the human race continue to deliver these staggering blows without arousing somewhere in the depths of Earth a reaction, a counterattack, a horror still undreamed of?
It's the same kind of thing you see in lots of 50s monster movies, but I like it. I can't get enough of it, so I can't live without both versions. Rodan would become a main recurring monster in the Godzilla franchise, appearing again in Ghidorah, the three-headed monster, Godzilla vs. Monster Zero, Destroy All Monsters, and several others. But they never brought back both Rodans. It was always one monster from then on. The same thing happened with Godzilla vs. Mothra when the two baby Mothras hatch at the end of the film. Then in Ghidorah, the three-headed monster, the twin fairies explain that one of them died. I guess Toho always regretted introducing their monsters in pairs. Even the meganolon had a lifespan outside of the first Rodan movie. In Godzilla vs. Megagyrus, they return in several forms, including as dragonflies and as the giant Megagyrus that fights Godzilla. And that brings us back full circle. Godzilla is where it all started, but Rodan came close in his mighty wake.